Here's an update on Hr4521. Now, unfortunately, I'm still seeing usark telling everybody this is going directly to the Senate. That is very, very unlikely. Not that it's a bad idea that people are contacting their senators, letting them know they're opposed to these amendments, in that, namely, the Lacey Act amendment that would affect us. Um, I read through the amendment, and I really need to sit down and go through it. And I actually need to contact the people that wrote it to get their explanation for it. But one of the things I caught that I noticed in the amendment to HR 52 or 4521 that didn't seem to be in the Senate bill that is basically the same amendment, 626, is where it adds the word knowing to a spot in the Lacey Act that says violates. That's extremely important. And the reason that is important is because back in 2012, when H.R. 511 was around, when it was in the House Judiciary Committee, and I've talked about this a bunch of times, but everybody says I'm making stuff up and lying. They added a knowing clause because they talked about all the people that have been sent to federal prison for unknowingly violating the Lacey Act. And I highly recommend, if you can find a video of that hearing, watch it. It was probably the most informative thing I've ever seen regarding the Lacey Act. Now, everybody supported H.R. 511 in the House Judiciary Committee based on, bad information. But they also recognized how dangerous it was for the American people to be in a position to be sent to prison for violating laws that they would have no way of knowing they exist. So they added a knowing clause. Well, if you go back and look, HSUS and them said the bill was gutted and blah, 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 because Fish and Wildlife didn't want anything to do with it because of the knowing clause was added. So when they added that knowing clause, that meant the burden was put on the state to show that, any soccer mom that crossed the state line with something on the Lacey Act knowingly committed a federal crime. And they don't want to have to do that. They want to say that, not knowing is no excuse and you're still guilty and you're still going to prison. So that's why the HR 511 was no longer a threat. And then at the end of the year, that's when Wyatt set up the hearing in the House Natural Resources Committee so he could pretend like he stopped it and got a bunch of donations. And then, that was it right at the time he was getting ready to make his exit, and he got his big payoff from Bagnell, and then he got his big payoff from from the reptile community, because this community is so dumb and uninformed that they actually thought it was a threat. And then, because of that, they killed the bill. Then it gave the Secretary of the Interior a reason to do an executive order, which was granted to them via Executive Order 13112 that was put in place by Clinton in 1999. So that's why that is relevant. That is extremely relevant, that the amendment for the Lacey Act that's in H.R. 4521 adds the word knowing in front of the word violates. That means it's getting a knowing clause, which means Fish and Wildlife will probably want nothing to do with it. That is huge. That is huge for us. I don't see usark reporting that. I don't see P-JAC reporting that. But that is something you need to know. And it also, in the part on importation, where they're essentially creating a whitelist, how I'm reading that is, just because something's not on the importation list doesn't mean it can't go across state lines. Not that that's like a win for us, but I think a lot of people are misinterpreting that. And if I'm reading it right, just because something can't be imported because it's not on that pre-approved list doesn't automatically make it considered injurious or invasive, according to the Lacey Act. So, not that that's a reason to get complacent or anything, or not worry, but that's just one aspect that I see that seems to be being blown out of proportion. Another thing is P-JAC is involved in this heavily, which is a bad thing. If you look what they did to Ohio, and they just threw everybody under the bus that wasn't selling stuff that was, in corporate pet stores. Um, that's how they handled it. And unfortunately, the reptile industry paid for that. Brian Potter, NARBC gave P-JAC $30,000 to hire the lobbyists that went into Ohio that lobbied for big box corporate pet stores. And, a lot of people, it's funny watching Kevin, in his crocodile tears for those retics that got euthanized up in Canada. But, I didn't hear him crying about it when Terry Wilkins' Sulawesi's got euthanized in Ohio, and his animals got euthanized in Ohio because Brian Potter and NARBC paid P-JAC to send their lobbyists to protect the big box store chains, and Terry's animals basically became illegal. So the state came in and killed them, and that's what, it's like, and that's, the reptile industry killed Sulawesi retics in Ohio. And I don't, shut up. My cat's making noise. One of my cats. And I don't see any complaining, from the reptile industry about that, or from Kevin about that, which is sad. So, we have to be careful when P-JAC is involved because they will protect the people that give them the most money, and the people that give them the most money are corporate pet stores. But I want to get back to the Senate issue and what the Hr4521 is actually doing. Now, since the companion bill, and I'm guessing they're going to consider it the companion bill because it's so similar, minus an insane amount of ridiculous amendments, is S1260, and only P-JAC has mentioned S6120 as of today. I have not seen. Oh my god, that cat's ridiculous. And I haven't seen USARK talk about this at all. So anytime there's two pieces of legislation that essentially do the same thing but don't have the same wording, once they pass the House and the Senate, they can't go to the president to be signed into law because they have to pass both the House and the Senate with the exact same language in it. They have to be identical. So typically what they do is they start something called a conference committee, and people from the House and the Senate get together to work out the differences on the bills. And once they're done, they send back the amended piece of legislation that's identical to both the House and the Senate, and it's called a conference report. And then it has to pass both House and Senate again. So that's actually where that's at. Now, you don't see conference committees as much as you used to, but one of their options would be to send HR 511 in its current state to the Senate, which would basically make S1260 obsolete. And I don't think they'll do that because the Democrats know that in its current state, it probably can't pass the House. I thought the House had a slight majority, but they don't. They got the filibuster, so it has to pass with more than a 51% majority. So I don't think it can pass. I don't think it can possibly pass in its current state. Not because of Lacey Act stuff, just because there's so much crap added to it. So I think that's what people need to understand, that it's most likely not getting dumped in the Senate anytime soon, and it will be rewritten. And hopefully USARK members can let USARK know this information, even though it should be vice versa, and hopefully find out who will be getting appointed to the conference committee, and hopefully in the conference committee get that amendment dropped and go from there. So when it is when the conference report, i.e. the revised version of the bill with identical language, is to be sent to both House and and Senate, do not have the Lacey Act amendment in it. So that's what I suggest for USARK members to push USARK to do. Be very careful of P-JAC getting involved. They're really not our friends. They're our friends to a certain extent, but they will throw venomous croc, big snake, monitor, people working with rare reptiles. They'll throw us under the bus in a second to protect their corporate backers. So that's I was more worried. I'm more worried about P-JAC being involved than I am the actual legislation, because I'm worried P-JAC will come in there and say, Well, why don't you drop this, this, and this, and go ahead and keep the interstate transportation part of it? Like, I'm worried they're going to get involved and try to work out a compromise, and that would essentially make USARK's lawsuit obsolete. That's my big concern with it. So that's where we're at on that bill. And as soon as some motion starts to happen with the bill, I'll do like a YouTube video like the other three on it, and let people know what exactly is going on. So, but yeah, people need to stop being so dramatic about this, and probably shouldn't be driving their senators nuts quite at this point, because if the bill is like it should be going to a conference committee, you're you're sounding like an idiot saying vote no on HR 4521, because that's not they're not voting on HR 4521 anymore. They're going to be voting on a revised version of that bill, and it's going to be a little bit before it even gets to their desk. So that's all I got for you today.